Somali authorities question suspects in connection with last week's bombing of a commercial airliner. Campaign 2016 moves on to the northern state of New Hampshire's primary. How could Tuesday's vote impact the race? And Brazil's biggest and most exciting party is underway in Rio. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. Well, tonight we begin with the race for the U.S. presidency. The northeastern state of New Hampshire becomes the center of the U.S. political universe with the nation's first primary. VOA's national correspondent Jim Malone reports from Manchester. What is unusual is how seriously the state voters take responsibility of being among the first to weigh in on the candidates.
Saturday night in Manchester, and the Monarchs have packed them in for a home game. A welcome break from the political focus on the New Hampshire primary. It's date night for married couple Kelly and Sean.
Just a night out. We have a little boy at home, so it's just kind of a chance for us to get out and have some fun before we're going to go back home for our parental duties.
But Sean says he's thinking about his vote on Tuesday.
Not yet, not yet. It's still up in the air. I mean, it's pretty close, but you know, it's going to come down to the crunch hour, definitely so.
Most of the fans have no interest in politics.
I don't care about the primaries.
We don't pay attention to primaries. We just come to the hockey games.
Mike Ossing came from Massachusetts for the game, but he appreciates the New Hampshire primary tradition.
Well, let's all the politicians get in touch with a lot of the people and kind of get a pulse of what the country's thinking at the time.
North of town is Roby's General Store. Its walls are a scrapbook of New Hampshire primary history.
It's really important for the people of New Hampshire to know that their next president, they met them, that they, shook their hand, that they got the right message from the person that they are going to choose for president.
Thank you for being here. New Hampshire is known for that close candidate-voter interaction. Evan Marks has been taking advantage.
You know, it's a great state to be able to come out here and see them all. We're very fortunate to have the ability to meet them personally. Not many other states can say that. And they hang around quite a bit. So whether you want to see them or not, you see them.
It's a pursuit that sometimes spans generations.
He and his grandfather have seen Jeb Bush, and we all went to see Lindsey Graham at a house party in town.
New Hampshire is known for its natural beauty, for small towns with patriotic values, and for hardy, independent people who can be as fickle as the New England weather. You can find the past around nearly every corner. Every 4 years, this state is called on to make history. And on primary day, the voters of New Hampshire will make history again.
Now for the latest on the New Hampshire primary, we go live via Skype to Manchester, New Hampshire, where VOA's Jim Malone is standing by. Jim, good to see you. Now, we know that we talked about Iowa, but now this is something different. Just give us a sense of how important, how significant this primary is. Well, we have some technical problems from New Hampshire as we try to connect with Jim Malone. But now turning to East Africa, Somali authorities are questioning at least 5 people in connection with an explosion that ripped a hole in the side of a passenger plane that killed 1 person and wounded 2 others last week. The Somali aviation minister has confirmed the arrest and says the blast that damaged the fuselage of the Diallo Airlines Airbus last Tuesday was caused by a bomb and not a mechanical failure. The explosion forced the pilot of the Djibouti-bound plane with 74 passengers to make an emergency landing only minutes after taking off from Mogadishu. An unnamed official says airport staffers and Diallo airline employees are among those detained, and more arrests may be forthcoming. Now, amid global concerns over the Zika virus, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has issued a new warning for men about transmitting the virus. The disease is spreading rapidly in Latin America and the Caribbean, creating a crisis for pregnant women. VOA's Carol Pearson reports very little is actually known about the virus.
The Centers for Disease Control is warning men to use condoms or to abstain from sex if their partners are pregnant and if they live in or have traveled to countries where the Zika virus is spreading. The same goes for men whose partners might become pregnant. The latest advice only highlights that very little is actually known about Zika and sexual transmission.
We don't know whether it's a rare event. We don't know how long someone is infected and being able to transmit it sexually, whether that's when you're acutely ill. Is it persist when a week later, a month later, 2 months later? We don't know that.
Another unknown, the link between Zika and microcephaly, a rare condition in which a baby's brain stops developing.
We don't know the degree of the connection, whether it's truly causal, whether there's Zika plus something else which is resulting in the microcephaly, where it's Zika interacting with something else, or if it has nothing at all to do with Zika. We don't know for sure.
Zika is new to the Americas, but the mosquito that carries the virus thrives in Latin America and the Caribbean.
So you had the perfect storm, a naive population to the particular infection, a real problem with mosquito and mosquito-transmitted diseases.
Fauci says the virus itself is inconsequential.
80% of the people have no symptoms, and the 20% that do have symptoms, the symptoms are very mild, self-limited, with very few sequelae.
And now more bad news. It can be transmitted through blood transfusions. Pregnant women especially are cautioned to cover up and use insecticide. Meantime, governments are conducting aggressive mosquito control programs.
If you eliminate or suppress the mosquito, you'll put an end to the outbreak. And you could do that by killing the mosquito with larvicide or insecticide, or preventing the mosquito from breeding.
Until more is known about the virus, and until a vaccine is developed, which is years away, that's all that can be done. Carol Pearson, VOA News, Washington.
Well, now back to Manchester, New Hampshire, and we have Jim Malone joining us via Skype. Jim, this primary, would you say now it feels like the election has really begun, the election process?
Well, it has begun, Vincent, and I think it's going to take a different turn in New Hampshire. Republican Donald Trump's leading in the polls here. Democrat Bernie Sanders is leading on the Democratic side. I think the big thing we're going to be watching is how close Hillary Clinton can get to Bernie Sanders in the Democratic race. And on the Republican side, who will finish behind Donald Trump? There are 5 candidates bunched in there, including Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, Chris Christie, and John Kasich. There's going to be a furious struggle to see who finishes behind Trump, because all of these people want to go on to the next primaries in Nevada and in South Carolina.
Now, somebody out there will say, well, this is just one state. How important is it for somebody to win in New Hampshire?
Well, traditionally, New Hampshire's role is to somewhat clear the field. People who don't do well here often leave the race. We may see some of that after Tuesday's results. On the other hand, Vincent, I have to tell you, talking to voters here, it's hard to get a fix on where they are. A lot of them are not deciding to the last minute. That means we could have a very mixed result on Tuesday, especially on the Republican side. And any number of these Republican contenders may be able to justify continuing beyond New Hampshire. So although it usually clarifies the field, it's not exactly clear that will happen this time. We'll just have to wait and see.
historically, do the rest of Americans tend to, especially those who have not made up their minds, make their minds after New Hampshire?
Well, I mean, I think they look to New Hampshire as an early indication of which candidates are doing well. On the Democratic side, though, we should point out that even though Bernie Sanders has an advantage here, the Clinton campaign is looking ahead to other races, particularly in South Carolina, because that's the first time that minority voters, African-American voters, will weigh in. So they're ready to withstand a possible loss here and look ahead. The Democratic race looks like it will go on for some time. And quite frankly, so does the Republican race. So New Hampshire this time looks like the next step in the process, but it will not be determinative.
Well, Jim, thank you very much for your excellent reporting from New Hampshire.
Thank you, Vincent.
Well, viewers, Jim Malone reporting live from Manchester, New Hampshire. Now, turning to the refugee crisis in Europe, a German airport made famous during the Cold War is now being used as an emergency accommodation to house refugees as the country struggles to cope with the continued arrival of thousands of asylum seekers. Henry Ridgewell reports from Berlin.
When it was built by the Nazis, Tempelhof's airport terminal was said to be the largest building in the world. Berlin authorities have now brought it back into service. Maria Kipp is spokesperson for Tamaja, the agency providing the refugee housing.
We are in emergency accommodation, but what happens in reality is that we have people who should already be in long-term accommodations, who should have way higher standards than we can actually provide here. So the majority of people has been here from day one, which is 3 months now, and will probably stay longer.
There are close to 3,000 migrants living across 4 aircraft hangars. Most have been here since the site opened 4 months ago. Laws stipulate that each resident must have 3 square meters of private space. Well-equipped nurseries have been built on site alongside classrooms and health centres.
One of the problems is that we have too little long-term accommodation, so people that are supposed to move out can't move out because there are no other accommodations. And secondly, Berlin's registration goes too slowly.
City authorities admit the accommodation is far from ideal, but say the numbers arriving in the city require urgent solutions. The cramped conditions mean new migrants are submitted to strict health screenings. Outside, VOA spoke to one Syrian family who had been refused entry.
We are suffering in these German refugee camps for 5 months now. We hope to find anything better.
Other residents praise the hard-working staff.
The atmosphere here is very nice. People are showing respect and care.
The airport is much loved by local Berliners. It was a lifeline for West Berlin when the Soviet Union blockaded the city at the beginning of the Cold War. Supplies were flown into Tempelhof, part of West Berlin, by American aircraft, the famous Berlin airlift. Tempelhof closed in 2008, triggering a battle over its future.
Berlin city officials recently voted to extend the emergency housing onto this vast airfield in front of the airport. But just 2 years ago, in a referendum, Berlin residents voted against any development on this land.
Refugee support groups have joined demonstrations against the proposed extension of emergency accommodation.
We want to see proper apartments for the refugees. They're spending a lot of money here to build these shabby shelters, what Americans would call a slum.
Das, was Amerikaner vielleicht, was wir in Deutschland nicht kannten als Slum, kennt hier baut der Senat einen Slum.
So this powerful symbol of the Cold War has become a battleground for rival visions of how to solve Berlin's migrant crisis. Henry Ridgewell for VOA News, Berlin.
Well, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa54. Check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince Makori. Well, coming up, a non-profit organization does its part to help people in Africa learn to read. Stay with us.
outside the debate hall.
Political season is about to change, too.
VOA News, Las Vegas.
I am Sheikha Sali, host and senior editor of VOA's international call-in talk show, Straight Talk Africa.
Today we'll examine the tobacco industry.
We pretty much touch on anything that you can think of. Politics, health issues, human rights issues, you name it, we talk about it. The issues that we discuss are pertinent to most people on the African continent. A very, very rare and unique opportunity to interact with their leaders.
Well, in today's business report, the markets started off looking volatile in February as they responded to a lower crude oil price and massive moves in the U.S. dollar and global currencies. Africa 54's business reporter Jill Malandrino has more from New York.
February trade is mimicking January due to weakness in crude oil and the massive swings in currency. Oil has plummeted from $112 in July 2014 to the low of $27 in January 2016. So why has crude been unable to find a floor in the price? It's due to the very basic economic principle of supply and demand. There's simply too much supply in the global marketplace, storage for the product is running out, and OPEC and non-OPEC producers are in a stalemate regarding production cuts. Until we see significant supply come out of the system, the crude complex will remain under pressure, and oil-dependent nations across the globe will have a difficult time maintaining and instituting a realistic budget. In fact, Nigeria and Angola are in talks with the World Bank and International Monetary Fund to help secure funding support, as government budgets have largely been funded by oil revenue. We constantly hear, as goes crude, so does the S&P 500. I would beg to differ at this point because it's evidenced by the divergence in crude oil prices and the S&P 500 following the 2014 crude peak. As we can see, the S&P 500 enjoyed a stunning rally while crude plummeted. So while crude in the near term has been the catalyst for S&P 500 volatility, it also coincides with the first Federal Reserve rate hike in December and other global bank policy action, which lends to the ongoing currency crisis. Let's again isolate Nigeria to see why devaluation is such a concern. For countries like Nigeria, which import a lot of their food and refined fuel, this has created serious challenges, and importers buy in dollars and sell in the naira, meaning they get less for their money or they have to charge consumers more. This is the case for many developing nations around the world that saw a boost in their economies during the oil boom. It was a phenomenon that they had to adjust to quickly, and it is much easier to adjust during the boom than it is during the bust. For the Voice of America in New York, I'm Jill Malandrino.
Now, across Africa, there are millions of people who cannot read, and there is a chronic shortage of books. A non-profit organization called World E-Reader is trying to help change all that, one e-reader at a time. The group provides tens of thousands of free e-readers, each with access to thousands of digital books to students and teachers in 12 African countries. Viewers Deborah Block tells us more.
Here at the Kibera Girls Soccer Academy, 17-year-old Naima Hassan and her fellow high school students have been using the World Reader device for a couple of years. Hassan considers herself lucky.
I get to learn everything that I want.
She says the e-reader has helped improve her education at her school in Nairobi because there is a lack of textbooks.
The textbooks that we have cannot be used by everyone in the school. So with the e-readers, now we can learn at a comfortable pace.
The San Francisco-based World Reader organization says its e-reader can increase reading comprehension in the African schools where it's being used. With so much information on the device, including books from African authors, Hassan's teacher, Clarissa Kinyi, says the students can learn more than they ever could before.
The girls are able to do research, so it is more accessible for them. They don't need to find from the dictionary probably the meaning of some words from the subjects that I'm teaching.
Hassan says the World Reader motivates her to learn about a lot of things. Besides English, there are books in many languages, including Swahili, Kenya's national language. Her teacher uses it to plan her classes.
So when I need to prepare a lesson using different books, I can easily access the materials. Then the World Reader is also easily portable. I can carry it home so as to prepare a lesson for different classes.
Hassan likes the portability too and shares the e-reader with her family.
My mom reads like those Swahili textbooks, and my brother likes playing game on the e-reader.
Akenyi also likes reading for pleasure.
While at home, at times I read some of the books for fun. For instance, we have a book titled Obama in that particular e-reader. So mostly I do read that particular book.
For Hassan, the World Reader is helping her towards her dream of becoming a TV camera woman.
Using the e-reader, you can download a book about a camera, then you can learn everything about a camera.
Akenyi says, thanks to World Reader, disadvantaged students like Hassan have a better chance of getting into college after high school. Deborah Block, VOA News, Washington.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. Not even the Zika virus can stop the party in Rio as Carnival kicks off. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In Burkina Faso, Australian citizen Jocelyn Elliott, kidnapped by Al-Qaeda last month, returns to the country's capital, Ouagadougou, and vows to secure her husband's release. In Somalia, central bank governor seeks a new currency to help rebuild the nation after decades of economic instability. In South Africa, Investing in African Mining Conference kicks off in Cape Town to discuss falling commodity prices. In Algeria, lawmakers passed constitutional reforms proposed by President Abdelaziz Bouteflika, including a 2-term limit for the presidency to strengthen democracy. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
How do you see the world?
I see countries in turmoil.
I see our planet changing.
I see people at peace.
No matter how you see the world, you'll get an unbiased and uncensored view of it on Voice of America. On television, radio, online, and mobile. In more than 40 languages all day, every day. Millions of people tune us in.
How do I see the world? On Voice of America.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. Well, Carnival Samba parade got underway on Sunday night in Rio de Janeiro, with 6 of the city's top samba schools vying to be crowned the best. The Olympic Games in St. George were some of the themes the schools explored during the first parade in the Samba Drome. Current and former Brazilian athletes were invited on board the Uneo da Ilha Samba School float and experienced one former long-distance runner described as like winning a marathon. Another 6 top Samba schools are parading on Monday. The winning school will be announced on Wednesday. Well, next up, it's customary during the Lunar Chinese New Year to hand out red envelopes stuffed with what is considered lucky money to children and friends. Now, the red envelope frenzy appeared 3 years ago when the long-traditioned lucky money became virtual and went viral. The official figure is surprising. During the Chinese New Year in 2014, more than 8 million users got into the red envelope grabbing spree for the first time and gave out more than 40 million envelopes. At foreign users, some people have printed out the lucky money timetable on the apps and set alarms in order to fight for the red envelopes. Digital red envelopes are becoming increasingly popular with the new phone shaking technology. In 2015, about 1.1 billion shakes were recorded to grab the lucky money across 185 countries and regions. Well, and finally, a music video that pokes fun at women for trying to make their high heels look like Louis Vuittons have gone viral in Russia. The clip for the song Exhibit from popular Russian rock band Leningrad tells the story of a young woman going on a date with a man called Sergei to a show of works by Vincent van Gogh. To impress him, the woman paints the bottoms of her shoes red to make them look like a pair of expensive Christian Louboutins stilettos. The video has racked up over 33 million views online. And that is what is trending today. Well, Super Bowl Sunday is in the books, and here with the latest news and note on the big game is Sonny Young with the sunny side of sports. Sonny.
Hi, Vincent, and sporty greetings once again to our Africa 54 viewers. Here's a sunny side of sports salute to the Denver Broncos, who defeated the Carolina Panthers 24-10 to win the Super Bowl of American-style professional football in Santa Clara, California. The Broncos relied on their tough defense to stop quarterback Cam Newton, the league's most valuable player, and the Panthers. Meanwhile, Denver's 39-year-old Peyton Manning became the oldest quarterback to win a Super Bowl. Some think he will now retire and have a storybook ending to a great quarterbacking career. Manning also won a Super Bowl with the Indianapolis Colts. This was Denver's third Super Bowl championship. The Broncos won back-to-back titles in 1997 and 1998. Here's another sunny side of sports salute to the Leopards of the Democratic Republic of Congo, who won their second African Nations Championship football title. The Leopards lifted the trophy after defeating the Eagles of Mali 3-0 in the final in Kigali, Rwanda. Meshak Elia scored 2 goals for the Congolese, while Jonathan Bolingi scored the third. This 3-week tournament was for home-based players in Africa who compete in their national leagues. It's a relatively new competition. The DR Congo also won the inaugural tournament in 2009. I'm Sonny Young, and that's the sunny side of sports. Vincent?
Well, Sonny, although this was, big Super Bowl night, but I think that note on the DRC is really significant, given that that country has been in turmoil for a long time.
Yeah, that country also has some very talented football players, Vincent. TP Mazembe is one of the big clubs in Africa. They're based in Lubumbashi in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And I know their football fans are very happy after seeing this team of local players. Again, they're not based in Europe or overseas, but second time they've won that tournament. Yeah, so a lot to be proud of.
Exactly, despite the fact that the country is many times just known for war, civil war, child soldiers. Anyway, thanks a lot, Sonny. Well, and be sure to check out the sunny side of sports every Monday and Friday right here on Africa 54. And that's our show for today. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.
Welcome to the Voice of America's Newswords.
Here is a story that has to do with defects or problems with cars.
Listen for the word that means to take back something. Recall.
They had meetings over this defect. They shared complaints over this defect. Yet there was no investigation by the government and no recall by General Motors until 10 years later.
Recall. It is a word that means to ask people officially to return something.
In our story, there were major problems with some General Motors cars. The man says the U.S. government and the car company took too long to issue a recall, so the cars could be fixed.
Now, when you hear the word recall, your American English will be good enough to know what this news word means.